Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Now let's go to the rolling Flint Hills, home of the Cats and Dogs studio. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Well, welcome to another edition of the Powercat Podcast. Fitz and Gills and Coles all together again. Gills' camera could fall over at any moment. There's a chance we'll finish this podcast, maybe from the 2-minute mark on, with Gills' camera aimed at the ceiling. And
people don't want to see my face, right?
I
Might as well just do that now.
I know. I mean, there's just so much sexy going on there with that ball cap and all your Powercat signs and your giant microphone. Anyhow, speaking of giant things, if you want a great volume of liquor from which to choose, go to the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Ask for the biggest bottle possible, also known as the Fitz size, and take it to the counter, pay for it, and proceed to fun. That's how the Fridge Wholesale Liquor works. You have to pay for the fun, but boy, is it fun. That's my fridge read. We're all matching today. We weren't matching. I was in a different shirt. Then I realized they were all wearing their lavender shirts, and you can see the difference in our lighting here. I'm apparently in the dark now because I had some lights burned out. But I think we all understand on this podcast, I'm not the brightest one. So let's get going with your questions from Wabash Station. Oh, and by the way, welcome to August. How the hell did that happen, guys? As this airs, not while we tape, as this airs at midnight, it's August 1st. I've got a practice to go to. Gills, call me at 9:45 and remind me. Go to practice.
Will do. So I'm your GPS tracking. I'm your GPS tracking guy. I got to wake you up in the morning. This is going to be a brutal job, isn't it?
I know. It's a lot of duties go into keeping track of me. Becky has most of them. The dogs have other ones, and you have a few. Life's not that hard. Let's get going to your questions from Wabash Station. He's volunteered to do it. It's going to be probably difficult to read the questions and hold your camera on your face at the same time.
It's going to be tough.
But Ryan Gilbert will take it away.
First questions from Chris66204. Besides DJ Giddens, which player has the most yards from scrimmage this season? Reminder, passing yards don't count as yards from scrimmage.
Cole, you gonna say it?
That's a tough question. Like, there's multiple ways you could go with this. Are we counting like kick and punt returns? Does that count as yards from scrimmage too?
I wouldn't think so. I think yards from scrimmage would be a play as a line of scrimmage.
Sure. I'm going to say Jace Brown. I think Jace Brown will have the second most yards from scrimmage. I think he'll be the leading receiver for Kansas State this year. I'll just tell you right now, I did see these questions beforehand. I did cheat. I'm not like you, Fitz. I'm not as good as you. These are not fully off the cuff. So I had about, 5 minutes to think about it. And I was going to say Garrett Oakley just because I think that he's going to have a really good chance to put up a lot of numbers this season. But I'm going to say Jace Brown because I really think that he will be the leading receiver. And I think they're going to try and get him the ball in some jet sweeps, get him the ball in open space. He'll be the leading receiver for Kansas State. Dylan Edwards is a sexy answer to go number 2 just because he's going to catch the ball and he is going to be handed the ball a lot this year. But I think Jace Brown, just because he has the potential to make some big-time plays, and he's got a chance to get 65 to 100 yards per game receiving every single week. So I'll take Jace Brown.
That's a very good choice. I'll go with Dylan Edwards just because I think they're going to find creative ways to get him the ball. When you got a weapon like that, you got to figure out how to use that, and I think it'll be 50-50 between in the backfield and at receiver. I think he will be on the field as much as possible with his knowledge of the playbook early on, maybe sharing time in the backfield with DJ Giddens or subbing in for him. Maybe they'll both be on the field together in the backfield. Maybe he'll be on the field with DJ in the backfield and him in the slot. I think they're going to find a lot of uses for him on offense. So I'm going to go with Dylan.
So the way Chris66204 decided to phrase this question is trying to throw us all off. I still think it's going to be Avery Johnson, despite those passing yards not counting for him. Okay, I get it with wide receivers or tight ends, right, with Oakley or Brown. if they get going, they get a good connection with Johnson. Yeah, but it's not going to be Dylan or DJ because they're just going to be splitting so many carries, right? Like that backfield is going to get a ton of yards, but it's going to be close to 50-50, right? And so I'm not sure that either one of those guys, when it's all said and done, I mean, if Avery Johnson, if they run him like we might think they will, and they're not too scared about injuries and stuff. There's a question about Roberson later on here. We can talk about that. But I mean, K-State's got a serviceable backup quarterback that for a series or a game, I think the Wildcats, you don't want to lose Avery Johnson, absolutely, but I think K-State can get by there. So this team, I would love to see them just not be scared of running Avery Johnson a lot. We know how good of a passer he is, absolutely. But when you think of Avery Johnson, everyone thinks of that quick speed, what he can do on the ground. So obviously, he's a passing threat without a doubt for K-State. But let's not forget about what he can do on the ground as well. So I'll go Avery Johnson here.
The tuck it and run answer. I like it. Those are three great answers, and I think probably based on who's going to be the primary receiver, I think Cole's answer might hold up in this, but we'll see. I mean, I have a feeling Keegan Johnson's going to have a bigger role. Dante Cephas will certainly help out a lot. And there's a lot of receivers, so I think they might spread the ball around a little bit from them, including
I agree too.
Dylan Edwards.
Well, but guys, let's think about this too, Gilbert, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in college football, sacks still count against rushing yards.
Which is
So
stupid, yes.
Fair.
right. So it's a stupid rule. It doesn't work like that in the NFL, but it works like that in college. So, I can think of multiple times last year where Will Howard had like a 13 or a 14-yard run, and then he got sacked on the next play. And you look down and you're like, oh, he only has 6 yards rushing. What? How does that work? But it's because of, the sack yards. I don't think Avery Johnson's going to get sacked as much as a Will Howard or a Skylar Thompson did, because I think his ability to escape the pocket and throw the ball away was an underrated part of the game against NC State. If you guys think back to that game, his ability to escape the pocket and know when to just throw the ball away. I've compared him to Patrick Mahomes before in that sense. But that's who it reminds me of, right? You watch the Chiefs, Mahomes doesn't normally take sacks because he knows when can I tuck the ball down and run, and when should I just throw it away? I think Avery has that gift as well of having that internal clock in his head and knowing, hey, I need to get rid of the ball or I just need to take off and run. But either way, if he does get sacked, then that will count against his yards. And no quarterback is perfect, so you expect that to happen a few times. So I'm with you, Ryan. I think that there's a chance that Avery could be up there too, but just something to think about when at the end of the season, it feels like Avery Johnson ran the ball for 1,000 rushing yards, and you look back and you're like, oh, they got sacked like 10 times, and so that's 100 yards right there.
I agree.
Well, to piggyback off of that just a little bit, Avery Johnson's ability, obviously, to recognize that pockets collapsing and stuff like that. Maybe he can throw it away, avoid those sacks, but he's got the legs to certainly turn that into yards. And so, yes, there's going to be a bunch of design quarterback runs, absolutely, but let's not forget about the fact that, okay, things are getting tough, make a quick decision, escape from the pocket, and pick up 5-10 yards on the ground. I can absolutely see that happening as well.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I like it.
Next question is from Purple My Nurple. If Avery Johnson were to get dinged up during the season, what can we expect from his backup, Taquan Roberson?
An exciting runner. That's his primary gift. A little bit less accurate with the passing, and I think that will change the offense a little bit, but his mobility could mean they just swing into more of a two-back set with him. It's a great question because we actually have no idea. All we know about him is from his film from UConn, and let's be honest, can we really tell how that translates to Kansas State's offense? Different people calling plays, different plays to be called. I'm not sure we fully grasp that, but look, let's be honest. He's not going to be a high-level thrower. There's a reason why they got him out of the portal as a COVID bonus year player, basically, or a fifth-year senior that wanted to come as knowing he's going to be the backup. So there's certainly some flaws to his game, but I think it was a magnificent pickup in terms of finding someone with experience and someone that you wouldn't really have to alter the entire offense for if Avery goes off the field. You might tweak the playbook with where he's throwing the ball, but I think they'll be able to function a lot of the things in their offense. But let's be honest, Cole, you take an elite athlete like Avery Johnson off the field, you can't replicate it. You can't cover that up. There's so many X factors it just covers. The rush gets through, he's gone. And maybe Roberson has that, is that instinctive play that under pressure and he can run, he'll do it. But we just don't know much about him and how it'll, apply itself to Kansas State's offense. But I'm hoping on the first game that K-State get away and he can get on the field so we can get a little glimpse of him.
Yeah, they need him to play.
Yeah.
I think they need to see what he has in order to fully feel comfortable about how they want to use Avery Johnson, to be quite honest. Gilbert, you talked about it, but how you use your starting quarterback is dependent upon that backup. If you feel confident in that backup, you feel confident that if a helmet pops off, this guy's not going to screw up the game, then you know what? Maybe you decide to run Avery a little more. I'm excited for Roberson simply because this is a guy who knows his role, right? Fitz, you brought it up. Very rarely do we see this in modern day college football where a guy transfers to a place knowing he'll be the backup. But to me, that signals one of two things. Number one, he understands his level and he just wants to be at a Power 5 school. I think that could be very true. Or number two, he is a very knowledgeable player and maybe one day wants to get into coaching. I have not spoken with him personally, so I don't know that to be a fact. But typically when we see stuff like this happen, it's because there's an opportunity there to help maybe mentor a younger quarterback. And if that's what he wants to get into in the future, I think this is a great start. And so what you can expect is a guy who can be kind of a coach on the field. He's not going to screw anything up. He might not make the big plays, but he's going to try and not turn the ball over, be a game manager, and make sure that he is acceptable until that starter gets back in. I don't think this is a guy coming in with a big head thinking he's going to win a job. This is a guy who understands his role, and when he's called upon, because he will be called upon at some point, he'll be ready to go. I think that's the biggest difference between Taquan Roberson and Jake Rubley and some of these other guys that K-State's had as backup quarterbacks is Roberson will be ready to go. He's going to prepare every single week like he'll be the starter. And I think that's what you get from an older guy. So, yeah, I absolutely love the addition. And I think this is going to really help K-State's offense in 2024.
Gills?
I agree.
Thank you.
Yes. You guys killed it. Next question is from Call Me T22. Who scores the first touchdown this year? My bet is Dylan Edwards.
I love
this. Call Me T's bet. That's not my bet, by the way.
Okay. I'm going to go Avery. I mean, I just see him breaking a run or, get it down inside the 5 and just kind of finds his way in like he did last year in a few plays where he just kind of sifts through and sees what the defense is going to give him and he just shoots through a gap. So I think it'll be Avery.
Well, Gilbert, we did this, like the last 2 or 3 years? Help me remember. I want to say Jaden Jackson scored the first touchdown this year.
Yep.
The year before it was Malik Knowles on the jet sweep.
I see where we're going here.
So I feel a receiver. I'm not going to say Jace Brown. I'm not going to say Keegan Johnson. I'm going to say Dante Cephas. I think Dante Cephas, maybe he lines up in the slot, little one-on-one action, seam route on the first drive of the game, 35-yard touchdown pass. Dante Cephas.
I think that's a good answer because, the MO on Avery Johnson is he's a runner. And we haven't seen what he can do throwing, right? That's kind of what everyone's saying. And we know better than that, but will Tennessee Martin?
Yeah.
Will they sell out on the run to try to stop Avery? Because obviously they have the Texas Tech film and know how explosive he is if he gets through your first line of defense. And I'm telling you, I think they might load it up and just think they have to take away the run. And exactly what Cole said might happen is someone's going to just split the, maybe just a post route right down the seam and gone. And Avery will lay it in there because we know he can throw the ball.
So you're changing your answer or no?
I know. I'm going to stick with it. I'm just saying your answer makes a lot of sense. Not as much sense as my answer. Because my answer makes the most sense, of course. And now the one that'll make no sense is Ryan Gilbert. Let's go.
Thank you for that setup.
No
I like that route of Dante Cephas. I think it's not going to be one of those prominent stars, right? You talked about the game plan, that you're going to want to stop Avery, Dylan, DJ. That is going to be on top of that scouting report. Is scouting report a basketball term? That's a football term
No.
too, right? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's obvious, right? So I think, you look back at last year, Jaden Jackson. Was it maybe a little bit of fool's gold early on? He scored 2 touchdowns in each of those first 2 games. And I think Jackson's going to be, no, not to bash him or anything, but he wasn't a prominent playmaker throughout the rest of the season. Early on, I think. So whoever scores this first touchdown, maybe be a little cautious with, but I think it'll absolutely be a guy like Cephas, Trey Spivey, Will Swanson, one of those guys that maybe isn't going to see the field a whole lot, but you want to, there's a psychology in, with football too. The great NFL quarterbacks early on in games on the first drive, okay, I got to get him a pass, let them get into that groove. Their momentum can kind of carry into games just with catching a pass or two. And so there's a lot of kind of reasons that go into that. And so having a player that maybe isn't a star catch a touchdown pass. Now, is that intentional with the scheme, with the route? This is going to be the play for a guy like Cephas, or is it going to be Avery Johnson in his mind saying, hey, I got to get this guy the ball, keep him locked in? So who knows who it'll be? I just don't think it's going to be one of those stars because the defense is going to be doing everything that they can to stop those guys.
So our answers are Avery Johnson, Dante Cephas, and if I interpreted your answer correctly, it's Hadley Panzer.
You can report eligible. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, right?
I know. You could.
There you go.
You could. If it is,
Gilbert, you brought up Will Swanson. If Will Swanson scores the first touchdown of the season, I will give you a hug in the press box.
All right. I really hope he doesn't score then. I'll take the hugs. I don't get many cool hugs now that we don't live together anymore.
That's true.
Used to get a lot of them though.
But we get another question?
We do.
Okay, let's go.
From TDE 67, which player is coming back from injury is poised to make the biggest impact this season? Did I say this was the last question of the first half?
No, you didn't.
No.
Is
There
it?
it is. There it is. This is, yes.
You don't do your job very well. Coming back from injury, gonna make a big impact. Well,
Can I take this one?
Yeah,
kind of goes along the lines of what we're doing right now at Go Powercat this week.
It is. Yeah, I'm gonna say Asa Newsome.
You stole my answer.
I know. I
drafted him in my article for that went up on Tuesday.
Listen, I think Asa Newsome has a chance to be the best linebacker in this linebacker room. He's probably the most talented in the linebacker room right now. K-State lost Jake Clifton, obviously, but Asa Newsome is going to step in line to be that guy who is the jack of all trades, who can play every single position. I don't necessarily think that's what K-State wants him to do, but this year he will play just as much as every single linebacker when he gets healthy. I know our friend Wagcats on Wabash Station absolutely loves Asa Newsome. I'm probably number 2 in the Asa Newsome fan club. I've been number 2 in the Asa Newsome fan club ever since I saw him at camp when he was going into his junior year. This kid is going to be a baller, man. I'm so excited to watch him play because he is physical, he is fast, and he is smart. And when you have all 3 of those instincts as a linebacker, you are going to be very, very good. And so I don't know when he'll be back fully healthy. I'm hoping that it's by Big 12 play. I mean, I would assume that by conference play, he is probably rotating in there and playing just as much as anybody. But that's going to be my answer, is Asa Newsome.
Okay. Man,
I've got nothing. That was where I was going to go as well.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to go with Taylor Potier. I think he's going to have a big year coming back. I know he played last year, but if you watch, that was not him. He really struggled with that second knee surgery, but now having a full year behind him with, back-to-back knee injuries, I think he'll be more confident. I think he'll be more assertive, and he also knows he's got to do it. I mean, they need that experience on the line. I think Taylor's going to have a big year.
Going down the depth chart, I mean, there's not a whole lot of guys that are coming back from missing the entirety of last season. So it's a short list.
I would say Keegan Johnson, I would also throw into that mix, guys.
Good,
I know
good.
he was healthy at the end of the season, and when he was healthy, I thought he was pretty good. So if I had to go number 2, I like your TP answer, Fitz, but I'm going to say Keegan Johnson because I do think this guy has a chance to be a number 1 receiver. He was a number 1 receiver at Iowa, and you go look at his numbers at Iowa. That was pretty impressive for an offense where he was at Iowa, where
Right.
we know how the offense is at Iowa. So he was at Iowa and put up
Where
good
was he
numbers
at before K-State?
at Iowa,
Oh,
I believe.
Where?
That's the word on the
should
street.
probably have pointed that out at some point.
Yeah, we know the juggernaut of an offense they are. So I'm excited for Keegan Johnson. Him and Jace Brown, I mean, I don't
I agree.
know when K-State has had a more a pair of receivers who I think are this talented. I think Jace Brown and Keegan Johnson are extremely talented. Have they had better receivers at the same time? For sure. But I don't know if they've had 2 guys who are as talented. And you throw Dante Cephas into that mix. It's a good, really good, pretty good receiver room for Matthew Middleton.
Cephas is the wild card for me on this offense. He wasn't effective at Penn State for whatever reason. And I don't think he fit in either to their offense or maybe their culture. Something didn't click because he was really good at Kent State. I think he's going to bounce back to that level. He's comfortable with his position coach. I think he's going to fit into this offense. And I've been told he's just a freak of an athlete with, the hands size of pie pans. So it's going to be interesting to see how they work him into that. And do you run some things almost like a guy who was injured, just to get him kind of a little bit confident, a little short passes to get him on track and then let him go. I think he could be huge this year, but I guess I'm going to change my answer to Hadley Panzer so I can agree with Gilbert. Hadley Panzer with the big whatever. I don't even know what we're talking about now. Is that it for the first half?
That is it.
Okay. That's it for the first half. If you didn't catch on, we'll be back with more of your Powercat podcast after you hear from our longtime sponsor, the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. They are swell.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Please visit the Fridge Wholesale Liquor, located at the corner of Claflin and Westport Road in Manhattan, Kansas.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to the Cats and Dogs studio.
Welcome back to the Powercat Podcast. Fitz and Gills and Coles all together in our matching outfits. And what's interesting is I guarantee you our pants don't match because there's a 50% chance Gilbert's not wearing any. So I just want to warn
really
you.
Pointed that low? Wow, how'd you know that?
If the camera falls off, we're probably going to get deplatformed by YouTube. I'm just saying that's how it works in these parts. If that does happen, I would advise you to head immediately to the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. They will be able to provide things to clear your memory, maybe lose your eyesight, and forget where the camera ended up pointing to on Ryan Gilbert. The Fridge Wholesale Liquor, they're there for you when you need to forget.
Can I point out something here?
I like that one.
Coles is the only one whose camera has actually fallen down mid-podcast.
That's
so
true.
I don't appreciate this slander, Fitz.
Okay. I take it all back. It's Cole's fault.
It always is.
Here's your questions from Wabash Station. Ryan Gilbert is in the groove and he's staying there. He's like Steph Curry on a in the zone bender of hitting 3-pointers. Except he can't read. Go ahead, Gills. Try to read some more.
First question of the second half from Purple Cheese. If you had to place a large bet on who wins the Big 12 championship this season, and your choices were the following two, what would you choose? 1, K-State/Utah, or 2, the field?
1. I mean, if I'm betting, I think that's the more likely outcome is one of those two teams ends up winning. But it also, would any of us be surprised if neither team is in the Big 12 championship after going through a schedule? Maybe some injuries happen. Maybe some bad breaks happen. Maybe you have to play Iowa State in a blizzard again. That's not good. You just don't know what's going to shake out from this schedule, but I won't be shocked in this conference if two teams we never expected are in Arlington. But I certainly think the most likely outcome is Kansas State and Utah meet, and then I am right because one of them will win. That's kind of how it works.
You think K-State and Utah are going to be in the championship game? I'm not. How many times, I keep saying this, but how many times is it that the two favorites to win the conference actually play in the Big 12 championship game?
I agree.
I'd have to go
Totally
back
agree.
in and look and see. I am going to pick number one because I will pick K-State to win the Big 12. I've been on record by saying I think they're going to win the Big 12. I think they're going to have a really good year. So I'm going to, by default, say number one. But I'm just not sold that Utah is going to be there. I'm just not sold. I think that a lot of things have to go right for Utah and for them to find themselves into the Big 12 championship game. Again, I'd have to go back and look, but I know it's practically a brand new conference. But how many times does a team walk into a conference that already exists and then wins that conference's championship? I don't know the answer to that question. It can't be that many, just off the top of my head. But I mean, man, guys, like, this is a good question because if you were to ask me, will these two teams be in the Big 12 championship game, or would you take any other teams from the field? I would probably take any other teams from the field. But because I think K-State's going to win the Big 12, I'm going to have to pick number one, but it's not a confident number one.
I've got to go the field just because, in my opinion, the gap between your Iowa States, Arizona's, Kansas, the gap between those teams and the very top, K-State and Utah, just isn't that big. I for sure, those are the two best teams, K-State and Utah. But even a team like West Virginia, UCF, some of those teams in the middle, I can see a path there where they win it. And so there's just K-State and Utah are not clearly going to just dominate this league. They're the two best teams in probably all of our opinions. There's no one, we're not going to disagree on that. But I love my chances with KU or Arizona, Iowa State, teams like that to go in and win it. And I've got way more options rather than just those two at the top.
Yep, that's the key. It's going to be a fun year. I just wonder where Utah is going to stumble, because it's going to happen. Maybe it'll be in Stillwater. I think their expectations of what visiting college football fields are like will be greatly altered by some of these trips.
Cool. Next question is from Imarika. What's the swing game on the schedule?
For me, it's Oklahoma State. Early on, you got to hurdle. Hopefully the team's 4-0 at that point. They've got Tulane, which is a big challenge. Arizona is a challenge. Going to BYU, you don't know what you're going to get from this BYU team. But I think when they come home and play Oklahoma State, it's enormous. It opens up the rest of the conference. If you get through that and you're 6-0, guys, I think they're going to really start cooking. And I think they have something to say about what happened last year in Stillwater. And I think they're going to play a really good game against the Cowboys. And, if they get that swing game and are 6-0, hold on. It's going to get really fun coming down the stretch because there's more challenges. But that's the game that I feel like they'll get the most boost from and the most deflation from, win or lose.
Is Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Interesting. I look at the schedule and I can pick multiple answers. I won't do that, but I think you'll be able to tell kind of which way the season is going to go after the second game. And I know that was probably a contentious point, a few years ago with K-State and Tulane, and we all thought that after they lost to Tulane, the season was going to go like this, and it ended up going like this. I get that. But I think going on the road is a little bit different than playing at home, especially when you're going on the road to a team at Tulane who, they're not going to take lightly, right? This team will not take that program lightly because of what happened. If they go out and they absolutely pound Tulane, then I think that you're looking at a team that is probably on the up and up. At that point, they might even be a top 15, top 10 team in the country. And so I think that's a kind of a statement game. As long as you win that game, you're probably feeling all right. I don't think if you lose the Arizona game, it really matters all that much. To me, the swing game on the schedule, guys, is West Virginia. Because
you said you were not going to pick multiple. You stole mine again.
I'm sorry.
Goodness.
But we all knew you were going to pick West Virginia just because it's close to Pittsburgh, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But no, like West Virginia is a team that K-State goes there, and how many times do they play horrible? It feels like most of the time whenever K-State goes down to Morgantown, they play horrible. Now, they've actually played pretty well the last 2 times they've been there. But, I mean, if they win that game, then, again, like Fitz has talked about, they might be undefeated. So, I that's the game, right? That's the game. And then you get KU at home, which kind of speaks for itself.
Geno Smith just texted, said, "What the hell are you talking about?
That's true.
K-State plays great in Morgantown." That's from
You have
Geno
Geno
Smith.
Smith's number. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I've got I got most famous people's numbers.
They never text you back though. But I like West Virginia here, not just because of playing on the road at West Virginia, but the timing of this game coming after the road trip at Colorado. You're playing up in the altitude, back-to-back road games. That's tough. I think K-State's going to win that game. And, going up against Deion Sanders and stuff, it's not necessarily a true rivalry game, but I think there's going to be some chippiness here. A lot of K-State fans out in Boulder. And so you pick up that win. I would say it's maybe more of a trap game than a swing game, but you've got to go out and win back-to-back games on the road, assuming you can pick up that first one on the road at Colorado. That game against West Virginia becomes kind of just tricky with the way the schedule lines up. And so maybe more of a trap game than a swing game, but that one's going to be tough for K-State if you can beat Colorado. Now, if K-State loses to Colorado, I mean, you don't want to lose back-to-back games, right? But I think that K-State would come out with a chip on its shoulder, more locked in after a loss than a win.
And you look at where it's settled too, guys. I mean, that's right before the KU game. I mean, I think Chris Kleiman's squads do a pretty good job of not ever overlooking an opponent per se. But I mean, if KU's as good as people think they're going to be, it'll be the biggest sunflower showdown in, I mean, the history of the rivalry. I mean, potentially. So, the schedule's interesting. We've been talking about it, but like, there's just so many opportunities for momentum. Right? K-State can pick up a win and go like this, or they can pick up a loss and go like this, and it can tailspin. So
he's
it's
really good with the finger graphs today. It doesn't really help the listeners that aren't watching, but his finger graphing has been on point. And Gilbert, I'd like to say, if K-State leaves playing the Colorado Buffaloes with a chip on their shoulder, it's going to be a very large cow chip right on your shoulder. Just buffalo chip. Just will smell like anything. Let's go to the next question.
From Rhino2929 Cat, how will the new scholarship or roster size for football impact K-State's walk-on program?
That's a great question. I don't think it'll impact it in the sense of they'll deem someone a walk-on. It might flip someone who's kind of 50-50, the preferred walk-on that you really like and you don't want to lose them. It might get those guys on scholarship immediately. But I do think there'll be an earlier engagement as a walk-on if you come in and have an impact, particularly on special teams. I would look for Chris Kleiman to use this kind of 50-50 like he uses the NIL. He's going to be able to add a few more players. Then again, keep this in mind. You only have so much NIL money. They almost have a salary cap on themselves, self-imposed, what they can spend. But I also think this will help in retention, like he uses NIL now to retain more than acquire. And I think they might be able to, get some of these guys that are close to earning a scholarship and then prove they are and try to keep them in the program because they earn that scholarship at a younger age. I've been told people don't think a lot of universities will use these extra 20 scholarships. And I don't think you can do that. I think you have to use as many as possible because it's going to create a perception you're not taking this as seriously as the 105 scholarship teams. You've self-imposed a restriction and you're just going to have less talent on your roster. I hate this, by the way, and I know why they did it. They did it so that more high school kids can be signed and fill classes. I get the intention of it, but adding 20 scholarships, again, like I said on my DD, if everyone in the power level plus Notre Dame and Oregon State and Washington State use those extra 20, That's like 1,300 players taken out of the mix for schools below that. And a lot of that's FBS, let alone the FCS and also the Division II that some of the walk-ons might have been. You just don't know. They can't end the walk-on program. I know that. If they do that, they're literally cutting out a huge piece of the heart and soul of college football. The kid that wasn't good enough, that came on and saved the day, had a great play, Rudy, all that, although he sucked. You got to keep that walk-on tradition in college football going. The 12th man at A&M was a guy out of the crowd, supposedly, that as legend goes. So, I hope they don't end the walk-ons, but I do think this will help K-State with retention and probably some borderline players that they haven't taken that they now can say, okay, we got a scholarship for you.
I look at this too from the other way, Fitz. How many kids are going to get that scholarship and then just be buried on the depth chart?
Good point.
Right? I mean, if you're a walk-on, you understand going in, I'm going to have to work my butt off to get on special teams. And after I get on special teams, I'm going to have to work my butt off to get in the rotation. And then when I get in the rotation, I'm going to have to work my butt off to become a starter.
Right.
There's a lot of kids that if you give them a scholarship, regardless of what you tell them, will come in and say, oh, I got a full ride. I'm going to come in and maybe I'll sit a year, but then I'm going to play. And it just doesn't work like that.
No.
It just doesn't work like that. And so I'm not saying that this is just, for K-State. I think this will be a college football problem.
Agreed.
We could see the transfer portal open up, just even more because, again, how many kids are going to go to a K-State or go to a Missouri or go to one of these, big schools and say, oh, I expect to play. And then they don't play because they have juniors and seniors who are in front of them who are really good and who have, bided their time. I think that it's good for college football because it does give more opportunities, but I think it could actually hurt with retention because, again, you give out these scholarships and kids want to play right away. And so when they don't play, we have this transfer portal that now is open for anybody. And I actually think it will hurt the game because more kids will not find a place to play. More kids will not find a place to play because if everybody's in the portal, then inevitably there will be some people who fall through the cracks.
Well, from the early stages of the transfer portal, certainly when it comes to Kansas State, there's been more of a trickle up of talent moving up from a lower level, so to speak, to Kansas State. That's how they've used it. But I think that's pretty common across college athletics. As we get into this and there's more talent consolidated on the bigger brands or certainly the two biggest conferences as perceived by the media, I think we'll see a trickle down of talent leaving those programs. And, maybe in the past, this kid would have been still a walk-on. And then that program means you got a lot more to prove and they're going to play the scholarship guys. And now that he's on a scholarship, the guy that would have played is out. So we'll see how it pans out. I know this, with every rule change the NCAA makes, something totally unintended and worse happens to the game. Yeah. And I'm not in a position right now to properly forecast what that is, but I think it'll come. I think there's going to be a bad fallout from this expansion of scholarships.
Yeah, you guys pretty much hit everything on the head. Just the only thing I was going to add was there's already a great number of players that are transferring out because they want that instant. They want to play instantly, right? They want to be instant impact players at a young age, right? As a sophomore, whatever. Okay, you're not getting that, you're out, and that's fine. Somebody can do that. They can do what they want, but with more scholarships, there's just going to be more players. It's just more of everything, so it's not going to help this problem we have.
I would agree. I'm intrigued to see what happens here. I know they want this to be about freshmen, getting a scholarship chance. I just think the big brands are going to still take their freshmen that they have been and just try to add more transfers, more. They want more coaches. It's unbelievable what's happening right now in college athletics. The greed is just overwhelming, and now it's going to surround the hoarding of talent at high levels. And I feel badly for the third string guy who thinks he was going to get a shot at Penn State and then realizes they have no intention of playing me. I feel badly for them because there'll be a lot of snake oil sold on the recruiting trail that in a different way now than ever before.
You guys correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like as a walk-on, if you don't play for 2 years, whatever, like there's still that chip on your shoulder
Right.
to work your way up. And, but if you're a scholarship guy and you're not playing after 2 years, you're gone, right? Right? You would agree? So,
For the most part,
Generally.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
so something to keep in mind there that you're
Yeah,
not going to have
maybe
as
if
many of
they
those guys.
my thought is if they walk on and get awarded a scholarship, there might be a sense of loyalty, but that's probably
Yeah.
naive on my part to think
I don't think
there's any
so.
loyalty in college sports.
It depends. That's all situationally, right? Like if a
Yep.
Kansas kid walks on and earns a scholarship at K-State, he ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
But, if that happens, if he's from South Dakota, if he's from, Nebraska and he's still not playing,
Yeah.
we got to
Well,
make
this year I
decisions
would
for
see was
kids.
somebody coming in and immediately having that scholarship compared to a guy like obviously if you come in as a walk-on, you earn that scholarship, you're staying, right? For sure. But the guys that come in and they instantly get it and they're not playing, peace, I'm out.
Could be. Could be.
Mhm.
Last question is from KSU Caesar. A major topic of 2023 was the conference tiebreaker rule. I see this rule as even more important in 2024. Have there been any changes or clarifications for this year?
That's a great question. Not that I know of. If you're the Big 12, you don't feel like there's anything to clarify because they like to have it vague and be able to twist it. I still don't understand how you do a tiebreaker, and once you get two teams elevated above everyone else, those aren't your two teams. I've never seen this. You get one team out of that, then you restart the process. I've never seen that before. But if that's the way the Big 12 is going to do it, at least everyone knows going in. And it'll be probably necessary more often because these schedules are going to be so equitable that it's going to create some disparity in the quality of wins and losses. I think a lot of teams could pile up at 8 or 9 wins and earn that second spot, and it'll get interesting. I hope they're better at handling it this time than they were last time.
Well, really, the question comes down: have they updated the rules at all? I mean, I'm googling it right now, but I mean, they had to clarify, right? They had to come out
Yeah.
and clarify, what the procedure was last year. I haven't seen. They didn't talk about it at Big 12 Media Day. Honestly, that was actually a little surprising that nobody asked that question. Maybe everybody just kind of forgot about it. But there needs to be a little bit more transparency there because you're right. There's 16 teams in the conference. Not everybody's going to play each other. So are they going to weigh certain schedules heavier than other schedules? Are they going to weigh, you lost to this team, they had 4 conference losses, but this team lost to this team, they had 3 conference losses. So the team that had 4 conference losses is a worse loss than the team that had 3 conference losses. Are they going to weigh it like that? That's probably not a bad idea to kind of look at strength of schedule and determine, who should be in the championship game. But really, at the end of the day, you just got to win. And so I think teams would rather not worry about tiebreakers and just worry about winning. Obviously, it didn't matter for K-State at the end of the year last year, but I mean, again, we all know they could have been royally screwed,
Yep.
which is very
They
apparent.
royally screwed themselves, basically.
Yes.
They took care of that. Yeah, keep in mind though, Cole, these tiebreakers are based on conference games only. Try to get you to the championship. And I do think there's going to be a log jam. Will it be at 1 or 2? Maybe. I tend to think it's going to be in the middle of the pack with a bunch of 6-7 win teams that just beat the snot out of each other. But I will also be surprised if the tiebreaker doesn't come into use heading into the final week. And it sorted itself out this time, but maybe they will have to apply it next time because a team like K-State doesn't mail it in on their last game because they found out they couldn't make it anyhow. So we'll see. I need to ask someone. I'll ask Gene Taylor about that if anything's been addressed. I personally hope they haven't because that was some of my favorite rage tweeting is trying to explain how this works, and they still did it weird. And some people, that's apparently how they do it, and it's wrong. But good for you. I'm going to move on and stop bitching about things like that.
Well,
Okay, that was a
think about-
lie. That was a lie. I'm gonna keep bitching.
You know who else has an opportunity to do just that, Fitz, is, I'm predicting the future here, but Arizona could totally get screwed here. If they find a way to beat K-State, and then let's just say that both teams finish with the exact same conference record, and say Utah maybe is that team that finishes with a better record than everybody, and it's K-State and Arizona, well, there's a potential there for K-State to have the tiebreaker over Arizona, even though both teams played head-to-head and Arizona won. Could you even begin to imagine how frustrating that would be? I mean, I guess it could go both ways too. I guess you could see a scenario where K-State and Arizona leapfrogs K-State, even though K-State has a head-to-head in non-conference play this year. Both of those teams are going to be near the top, you'd have to imagine. So, I mean, God, that would be a nightmare for the Big 12 to say, yeah, sorry, we know you won, but the other team actually gets the chance to play for the college football playoff. Sorry.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting, because by the rules, those games don't count in breaking a Big 12 tiebreaker, because it's a non-conference game, but it's a conference opponent. You do have a head-to-head. I don't know. I would be all for them saying, if you play a non-conference with a conference opponent, that it can't be used in the standings, but it can be used as a tiebreaker in head-to-head.
That might be something worth checking into. Because it really wouldn't surprise me if the Big 12 would want that to happen, because it adds a little bit more legitimacy to that game, when it's played in the beginning part of the year.
I'm going to just treat it like it is a Big 12 game, and like you get the bonus game. I'm all in favor of this conference, as they've talked about, going to the 10 games. I think this conference is going to have a heck of a time scheduling in the non-con, particularly if the ACC comes apart and more schools come this direction. I think trying to get the Big 10 and SEC to schedule you is going to be a problem. And while that is, what they would probably want, I don't think it's going to be easy to pull off. And so, yeah, I can see this conference going to 10 games. But as far as the tiebreaker goes, that is something that's really odd. The loser of either that or what is it, Baylor, Utah?
It
could end up tied with the same team coming down the stretch and then win the tiebreaker over the team that beat you earlier this year. It's a strange circumstance. Oh, man. Gills, any thoughts on that?
Only thing I was going to add was that it's going to be a challenge to find common opponents with so many teams. Whether that's one or multiple, right? I mean, that can be the trickiest part here with 16 teams when it comes to the end of the season, finding common opponents for tiebreakers.
I think in this era of the expanded playoff, you might be wise, if you don't have direct head-to-head, to just use the playoff rankings if they're tied, because that way you get in the most relevant school in terms of getting an at-large bid if they lose.
That's a good point.
I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I will check with Gene Taylor. I didn't get Brett Yormark's number in Vegas. Gil's got one, but it was for Betty Yormark, and I don't think it was his wife. She was way too young.
Hey, didn't we have a meeting before we went out there? We said what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yeah.
You must not have remembered that.
I don't remember much from Vegas. That's it.
You don't remember seeing Geno Smith out there? Got his number?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember I remember finding out that someone in the Big 12 media is apparently a stalker walking through casinos. It was kind of odd. There he is again.
Very.
There he goes. He's back. He's there. That's it. That's in the podcast. Just imagine over the next 2 days, Ron Gilbert will walk by the front of your house. That's what we experienced in Las Vegas in a compressed period of time of one evening. And we survived. Nobody was murdered. Nobody failed to make it to football season because it's August 1st. So it's football season. Enjoy. demand that you enjoy this. I demand that we end this podcast. Cole, Gills, great job. Thank you so much. My lavender looks better than your lavenders.
This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.